In a grand university known for its challenging mathematics department, there lived a professor named Dr. Jonathan Reed. He was a man of great reputation, admired by many for his sharp mind and years of contributions to the field of calculus. Every week, he held seminars where graduate students gathered to learn from him. These sessions were intense, filled with complex equations and theories that left even the brightest minds scratching their heads. But among the attendees, there was someone who didn't belong to the world of academics, at least not officially. Her name was Emily Carter, a quiet woman in her late 20s who worked as a janitor at the university. While others came to the lecture halls armed with notebooks and calculators, Emily carried a mop and a bucket. Her job was simple: clean up after the hustle and bustle of daily university life. Yet, she had a secret, one no one knew about. Emily wasn't just any ordinary janitor. She had an extraordinary mind hidden beneath her modest exterior. Emily's fascination with learning started when she was young. As a child, she had scored exceptionally high on IQ tests, astonishing everyone around her. However, life had its challenges, and circumstances forced her down a different path. Instead of pursuing formal education, she chose to live a quiet life, working odd jobs to make ends meet. Despite this, her love for knowledge never faded. During her free time, she devoured books on advanced topics like physics, philosophy, and mathematics. To her, these subjects weren't just dry theories. They were windows into understanding the universe. Every evening, after finishing her cleaning duties, Emily would linger in the lecture halls, listening intently to the professor's lectures. She sat quietly in the back corner, blending into the shadows so no one would notice her presence. The professors spoke passionately about derivatives, integrals, and infinite series, and Emily absorbed every word like a sponge. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she pieced together the intricate puzzles of calculus in her mind. For her, it was like solving a mystery, each equation leading to a deeper truth. One day, as Dr. Reed wrapped up his seminar, he noticed Emily still sitting in the room. He had seen her before, always in the background, always silent. But he had never paid much attention to her. Assuming she was simply curious or perhaps even mocking the complexity of his subject, he decided to challenge her. With a smirk playing on his lips, he walked over to her and handed her a sheet of paper. On it was written one of the toughest calculus problems he had ever assigned to his graduate students, a problem that had stumped even the most brilliant minds in his class. "Here," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "See if you can figure this out. It's been giving my top students quite a headache." He fully expected her to hand it back with blank stares or clumsy attempts. After all, what could a janitor possibly know about advanced calculus? Emily accepted the paper without saying a word, her expression calm and unreadable. Little did Dr. Reed know, he had just set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. As Emily left the lecture hall that evening, clutching the piece of paper tightly in her hand, she felt a mix of excitement and determination bubbling inside her. This wasn't just a test, it was an opportunity. And Emily, with her quiet confidence and untapped brilliance, was ready to rise to the occasion. That evening, as Emily stepped out of the lecture hall, she couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, she was amused by Dr. Reed's dismissive attitude. On the other, she felt a spark of excitement at the challenge he had unknowingly thrown her way. The problem on the sheet was indeed difficult, one that would require deep thought and creativity to solve. But Emily wasn't intimidated. If anything, she saw it as a chance to prove something, not to Dr. Reed or anyone else, but to herself. Back in her small apartment, Emily spread the paper out on her cluttered kitchen table. The room was modest, with peeling wallpaper and secondhand furniture, but it was filled with books, stacks upon stacks of them. Calculus textbooks sat next to novels. Philosophy treatises rested beside science journals, and notebooks filled with her own scribbles were scattered everywhere. This was her sanctuary, a place where she could think freely without judgment. She stared at the problem for a long moment. letting her mind wander through its intricacies. To most people, it might have looked like an impenetrable wall of numbers and symbols. But to Emily, it was more like a puzzle waiting to be unraveled. She began jotting down ideas, drawing diagrams, and testing different approaches. As the hours passed, she lost track of time, completely absorbed in the process. Her pencil moved swiftly across the pages, leaving trails of equations and annotations that only she could fully understand. What set Emily apart was her unique way of thinking. While others might rely strictly on formulas and traditional methods, she approached problems from unexpected angles. She often visualized mathematical concepts as shapes or patterns, imagining how they interacted in three-dimensional space. This unconventional perspective allowed her to see connections that others missed. By dawn, Emily had not only solved the problem, but also discovered an alternative solution that simplified the original approach significantly. It was elegant, efficient, and entirely her own. Over the next few days, Emily double-checked her work meticulously, ensuring every step was flawless. She knew how important precision was in mathematics, especially when dealing with such a complex problem. When she was finally satisfied, she neatly wrote down her solutions and tucked the paper into her bag. Though she didn't seek recognition, she felt a quiet pride in what she had accomplished. After all, this wasn't just about proving Dr. Reed wrong. It was about embracing her own potential. On the day of the next seminar, Emily arrived early, carrying the completed worksheet with her. She waited patiently until Dr. Reed finished his lecture, then approached him cautiously. He was standing near the podium, chatting with a group of students, when she handed him the paper. At first, he barely glanced at it, assuming it would be a jumble of half-formed attempts or nonsensical guesses. But as his eyes scanned the page, his expression changed dramatically. The condescending smirk faded from his face, replaced by a look of shock and disbelief. The solutions were perfect, not only correct but innovative in ways he hadn't anticipated. His brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages, trying to comprehend how someone like Emily could have solved such a daunting problem. Finally, he looked up at her, his voice tinged with both awe and confusion. "How did you do this?" he asked, his tone no longer dismissive but genuinely curious. Emily met his gaze calmly, her demeanor unchanged. In simple, clear words, she explained her reasoning, walking him through each step of her solution. Her explanation was concise yet thorough, revealing a depth of understanding that astonished everyone within earshot. Students who had been packing up their things paused to listen, drawn in by the clarity of her logic. Even Dr. Reed, who prided himself on his expertise, found himself learning something new. As Emily spoke, a murmur of surprise rippled through the room. No one could believe what they were witnessing. A janitor, someone they had overlooked countless times, had just outshone some of the brightest minds in the department. For Dr. Reed, it was a humbling moment. He realized that his initial assumption about Emily had been grossly mistaken. Far from being ignorant or incapable, she possessed a brilliance that rivaled, if not surpassed, many of his own students. But Emily didn't gloat or demand recognition. She simply smiled faintly, thanked Dr. Reed for the challenge, and walked away, leaving behind a stunned audience and a professor grappling with a newfound respect for the woman he had once underestimated. The ripple effect of Emily's solution spread faster than she could have imagined. Word of what had happened in the lecture hall traveled like wildfire through the university corridors. By the next morning, whispers about the janitor who solved the impossible calculus problem reached every corner of the campus. Students huddled together between classes, exchanging stories with wide eyes and animated gestures. Professors discussed it over coffee in the faculty lounge, their tones ranging from disbelief to admiration. Even those who hadn't been present during the incident found themselves intrigued by the growing legend of Emily Carter. Dr. Reed, still reeling from his encounter with Emily, couldn't shake off the feeling that he had stumbled upon something extraordinary. He replayed the moment in his mind. The way her calm demeanor contrasted with the brilliance of her work, the clarity of her explanations, and the quiet confidence she exuded. It wasn't just her mathematical skill that impressed him. It was her humility and grace under pressure. She didn't seek validation or glory. She simply shared her knowledge as if it were second nature to her. But not everyone reacted with admiration. Some members of the mathematics department dismissed the story as exaggerated or even fabricated. It must have been a fluke, one professor muttered during a meeting. How could someone without formal training solve something our brightest students struggled with? Others suggested that Emily might have copied the solution from somewhere, refusing to believe that such talent could exist outside the confines of academia. These skeptics demanded proof, not just of her ability to solve the specific problem, but of her broader understanding of advanced mathematics. Determined to address these doubts, Dr. Reed decided to take matters into his own hands. He approached Emily later that week, finding her tidying up a classroom after hours. This time, there was no trace of condescension in his voice, only genuine curiosity and respect. "Emily," he began, "I need to ask you something. Would you be willing to present your solution to the entire mathematics department? I think it's important for people to hear directly from you." Emily paused, her mop hovering midair. The idea of standing in front of a room full of professors and graduate students made her uneasy. She had always preferred working behind the scenes, away from the spotlight. But she also understood the significance of this moment. If she declined, the skeptics would win, and her achievement might be written off as luck or coincidence. Taking a deep breath, she nodded slowly. "All right," she said softly. "I'll do it." In preparation for the presentation, Dr. Reed offered to help Emily organize her thoughts and refine her explanations. They met several times in his office, where Emily patiently walked him through her methodology. Each session left Dr. Reed more astounded than the last. Her insights weren't just correct, they were groundbreaking. She introduced techniques and perspectives that challenged conventional approaches, forcing him to rethink problems he had taught for years. Meanwhile, anticipation built among the faculty and students. Flyers announcing the special seminar appeared on bulletin boards across campus. The title read, "An Unconventional Approach to Advanced Calculus." While some attendees came out of genuine interest, others arrived hoping to debunk the myth of Emily's genius. Regardless of their motives, the lecture hall was packed when the day finally arrived. As Emily stood at the podium, facing rows of curious faces, she felt a flutter of nerves. But once she began speaking, her anxiety melted away. She started by breaking down the original problem into simpler terms, making sure everyone in the audience could follow along. Then, step by step, she unveiled her solution, explaining each decision with precision and care. Her voice was steady, her reasoning impeccable, and her passion undeniable. By the end of the presentation, the room was silent, all eyes fixed on Emily in awe. Even the harshest critics had nothing to say. What they had witnessed wasn't just a display of raw intelligence. It was a masterclass in creativity, dedication, and humility. For many, it was a humbling reminder that brilliance doesn't always come wrapped in degrees or titles. It can hide in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to shine. The day of the presentation arrived, and the atmosphere in the lecture hall was electric. Students, professors, and even a few administrators filled every seat, with some standing along the walls to catch a glimpse of the woman who had become the talk of the university. Whispers buzzed through the crowd as people speculated about what they were about to witness. Would Emily stumble under pressure, or would she prove her genius once again? The air was thick with anticipation, and when Emily finally walked onto the stage, the room fell silent. Dressed in her usual simple attire, a plain sweater and jeans, Emily looked like an unlikely figure to command such attention. There were no flashy props or elaborate slides to accompany her, just a whiteboard, a marker, and her steady hands. For a moment, she stood quietly at the podium, scanning the sea of faces before her. She could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her, but instead of letting it overwhelm her, she drew strength from it. Clearing her throat, she began to speak. "Thank you all for coming today," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "I know many of you are curious about how I solved the problem Dr. Reed gave me. But before we dive into that, let's take a step back and understand why this problem is so challenging." With those words, she turned to the whiteboard and started writing. Her handwriting was neat and deliberate, each letter and symbol perfectly formed. She broke the problem into smaller, more digestible parts, explaining the underlying principles in a way that even beginners could grasp. As she worked through the equation, something remarkable happened. The audience leaned forward in their seats, captivated. Emily's explanations weren't dry or mechanical. They were alive with energy and insight. She used analogies to make complex ideas relatable, comparing mathematical concepts to everyday experiences. For instance, she likened integrals to measuring the area of irregular shapes, like cutting slices of pie to calculate its total size. These vivid examples made the abstract tangible, earning murmurs of appreciation from the crowd. But what truly set Emily apart was her ability to think outside the box. At one point, she paused and turned to face the audience. "Most people approach this type of problem using standard methods," she said, gesturing to the board. "And while those methods work, they can be time-consuming and cumbersome. So, I asked myself, is there another way? A simpler way?" She then introduced her alternative solution, a method so elegant and efficient that it left jaws dropping. It wasn't just faster. It offered a fresh perspective that challenged long-held assumptions about how calculus should be done. Throughout the presentation, Emily remained calm and composed, answering questions with clarity and patience. When a particularly skeptical professor raised his hand to challenge her reasoning, she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled warmly and invited him to join her at the board. Together, they worked through the problem step by step, with Emily guiding him gently toward understanding. By the end of their exchange, the professor nodded in admiration, conceding that her approach was not only valid but brilliant. By the time Emily concluded her talk, the room erupted into applause, a mix of cheers, whistles, and thunderous clapping that echoed off the walls. People rose to their feet, unable to contain their enthusiasm. Even the harshest skeptics couldn't deny the brilliance they had just witnessed. One student later remarked, "It wasn't just a math lesson. It was like watching art come to life." Afterward, a line formed near the stage as attendees waited to speak with Emily. Some wanted to congratulate her, others sought advice, and a few simply wanted to shake her hand. Dr. Reed watched from the sidelines, pride swelling in his chest. He realized that Emily's impact extended far beyond solving a single calculus problem. She had reminded everyone in that room, not just students, but seasoned academics too, that learning has no boundaries. Brilliance isn't confined to classrooms or degrees. It can flourish anywhere, often in the most unexpected places. For Emily, however, the real reward wasn't the applause or accolades. It was the knowledge that she had inspired others to see the beauty in mathematics and perhaps to believe in themselves a little more. As she packed up her notes and prepared to leave, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. This wasn't the end of her journey. It was only the beginning. In the days following Emily's presentation, the university buzzed with excitement. News of her groundbreaking solution spread beyond the mathematics department, reaching other faculties and even making headlines in local newspapers. The story of the janitor-turned-mathematical prodigy captured the imagination of everyone who heard it. Students began stopping Emily in the hallways to ask for advice or share their admiration. Professors invited her to sit in on advanced lectures, eager to learn from her unique perspective. Even strangers approached her while she was working, wanting to shake her hand or thank her for inspiring them. Despite the sudden attention, Emily remained humble and grounded. She didn't seek fame or recognition, nor did she let the praise go to her head. Instead, she continued her routine as usual, cleaning classrooms, organizing supplies, and sneaking in moments of study whenever she could. To her, solving the calculus problem wasn't a life-changing event. It was simply something she enjoyed doing. But life had other plans for her. One afternoon, As Emily was finishing up her shift, Dr. Reed approached her with an offer that would alter the course of her life. "Emily," he said earnestly, "we've discussed your talent in the department, and I think you deserve more than just acknowledgement. You belong here, not as a janitor, but as a student." He went on to explain that the university wanted to provide her with a full scholarship to pursue formal education. It was an opportunity most people could only dream of, and yet, Emily hesitated. "I appreciate the offer," she replied thoughtfully, "but I've never been part of something like this before. What if I don't fit in? What if I can't keep up?" Her doubts were genuine. For years, she had lived quietly on the fringes of academia, content to observe and learn without stepping into the spotlight. The idea of joining the very world she had admired from afar felt daunting. Dr. Reed placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Emily, you already proved you can keep up. And then some. Trust me, no one doubts your abilities. As for fitting in, well, maybe it's time we all learn to redefine what fitting in means." His words struck a chord with her. After a long pause, she agreed to give it a try. The transition wasn't easy at first. Balancing her studies with her part-time job was challenging, especially since she insisted on continuing her work as a janitor. "It keeps me grounded," she told Dr. Reed when he suggested she quit. "Besides, I don't want to forget where I came from." Her classmates were initially unsure how to interact with her. Some treated her with awe, others with skepticism, but over time, they came to respect her for her kindness, humility, and unmatched intellect. As Emily delved deeper into her coursework, her natural talent shone brighter than ever. She excelled in subjects far beyond mathematics, impressing professors in fields like physics, computer science, and engineering. One project stood out in particular: a proposal to use mathematical models to optimize resource distribution in underserved communities. Drawing from her own experiences growing up in hardship, Emily developed algorithms that could predict shortages and allocate aid more efficiently. Her work caught the eye of researchers outside the university, leading to collaborations with organizations working on global humanitarian projects. But Emily's greatest impact wasn't measured in grades or accolades. It was in the way she inspired those around her. She became a mentor to struggling students, offering guidance not just in academics but in life. She often reminded them that intelligence isn't defined by test scores or degrees. "Everyone has potential," she'd say during tutoring sessions. "Sometimes all it takes is someone believing in you to unlock it." Her presence transformed the university culture. Faculty members began rethinking how they identified and nurtured talent. Programs were introduced to support non-traditional students, and efforts were made to create a more inclusive environment. Emily's journey served as a powerful reminder that brilliance can emerge from anywhere if given the chance. Though she was now celebrated as a rising star in academia, Emily stayed true to herself. She refused to let success change her core values. Whether she was cleaning floors or presenting research at conferences, she carried the same quiet dignity and determination that had always defined her. And as she walked through the halls of the university, she couldn't help but smile knowing that her story had sparked a ripple effect, a movement toward greater openness, acceptance, and belief in the untapped potential within us all. As Emily's academic journey progressed, her life began to transform in ways she never imagined. The shy janitor who once blended into the background was now a prominent figure at the university, known not only for her intellect, but also for her kindness and humility. Her days were filled with lectures, study sessions, and research projects, yet she still found time to clean classrooms late at night. To her, it wasn't just about staying grounded. It was about honoring the path that had brought her here. "This is where I started," she often said. "It reminds me of how far I've come and how much farther I can go." One of Emily's most significant contributions came through her work on resource optimization. Inspired by her own experiences growing up in underserved communities, she developed algorithms designed to address real-world problems like food shortages, housing crises, and access to health care. Her models weren't just theoretical, They were practical tools that could be implemented immediately. For example, she collaborated with local charities to create a system that predicted areas likely to face food insecurity based on economic data. This allowed organizations to distribute supplies more efficiently, ensuring help reached those who needed it most before emergencies occurred. Her innovative approach earned widespread recognition. Researchers from across the country invited her to speak at conferences, sharing her methods with experts in fields ranging from public policy to environmental science. At first, Emily felt out of place among these seasoned professionals. She worried they might dismiss her ideas because of her unconventional background. But as soon as she began presenting her findings, with clear explanations and relatable examples, she won them over. Attendees praised her ability to make complex concepts accessible, calling her presentations a masterclass in simplicity and brilliance. Despite her growing fame, Emily remained deeply connected to her roots. Whenever possible, she returned to her old neighborhood, volunteering at community centers and mentoring young students. She told them stories about her journey, emphasizing the importance of perseverance and self-belief. "You don't need fancy titles or expensive schools to learn," she'd say during workshops. "All you need is curiosity and the courage to keep going, even when things seem impossible." Her words resonated with the children, many of whom saw themselves in her story. Some even began pursuing their own passions, inspired by her example. Back at the university, Emily's presence continued to inspire change. Faculty members noticed a shift in student attitudes, more collaboration, less competition. People started valuing diverse perspectives, recognizing that innovation often comes from unexpected places. Even the skeptics who had doubted her abilities in the beginning became some of her strongest supporters. One professor admitted, "Emily reminded us what education is really about: discovery, growth, and breaking down barriers, not reinforcing them." Dr. Reed, too, underwent a transformation. Watching Emily thrive reinforced his belief in the power of mentorship and second chances. He began advocating for policies that supported non-traditional students, pushing for scholarships and programs tailored to individuals with unique backgrounds. "If we hadn't given Emily a chance," he told colleagues during a meeting, "we would have missed out on one of the greatest minds this university has ever seen." By the time Emily graduated at the top of her class, earning not only her bachelor's degree, but also completing a master's program in record time, she had become a symbol of hope and possibility. Yet she never let success inflate her ego. On graduation day, as she stood on stage receiving her diploma, she glanced toward the back of the auditorium. There, sitting quietly among the crowd, was an elderly janitor who had encouraged her during her early days at the university. Their eyes met, and Emily gave him a small nod, a silent thank you for reminding her that every role, no matter how humble, contributes to something greater. As Emily prepared to embark on the next chapter of her life, she reflected on how far she'd come. From mopping floors to solving global challenges, her journey had been anything but ordinary. But perhaps the most remarkable part wasn't her achievements. It was the ripple effect she left behind. By embracing her talents and refusing to conform to societal expectations, Emily had opened doors not just for herself, but for countless others waiting to step through. And though her future was uncertain, one thing was clear: wherever she went, she would continue inspiring people to see beyond labels and limitations, to believe in the limitless potential within themselves. After completing her graduate studies, Emily's life took on a new rhythm. She accepted a teaching position at the same university where she had once worked as a janitor, becoming one of its youngest professors. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Emily herself. On her first day in front of a classroom, she couldn't help but smile as she looked around at the eager faces staring back at her. Many of these students were younger than she was, yet they listened intently, hanging on to her every word. It was a role she never imagined for herself, but one that felt strangely natural. Emily approached teaching with the same passion and creativity that defined her problem-solving. She didn't just lecture. She engaged her students, encouraging them to think critically and challenge assumptions. Her lessons often began with real-world scenarios, drawing connections between abstract theories and everyday experiences. For instance, when explaining probability, she used examples like predicting weather patterns or calculating lottery odds. Math isn't just numbers on paper, she'd say. It's a tool to understand the world around us. Her unconventional methods resonated deeply with her students, many of whom went on to excel in their own careers. But Emily's influence extended far beyond the classroom. She became an advocate for inclusivity in education, speaking out about the importance of recognizing talent in unconventional places. At conferences and seminars, she shared her story, not to boast, but to inspire change. We live in a world that values titles and credentials, she told audiences during one talk. But brilliance doesn't always wear a suit or carry a diploma. Sometimes it wears a uniform and pushes a mop. Our job is to create spaces where everyone feels welcome to contribute. Her advocacy led to tangible changes within the university. Programs were established to support non-traditional students, offering scholarships, mentorship opportunities, and flexible learning options. A new initiative called Open Doors invited local community members to attend lectures and workshops free of charge, fostering a culture of lifelong learning. Emily played a key role in designing these initiatives, ensuring they prioritized accessibility and diversity. Under her guidance, the university slowly transformed into a place where people from all walks of life could thrive. Outside academia, Emily continued tackling global challenges through her research. One of her most impactful projects involved developing algorithms to improve disaster response systems. By analyzing data from past emergencies, she created models that predicted resource needs and optimized aid delivery. Her work saved lives during hurricanes, earthquakes, and pandemics, earning her international acclaim. Yet, despite the accolades, she remained humble, deflecting praise onto her team and collaborators. "None of this would have been possible without the people who believed in me," she said in an interview. Success isn't individual, it's collective. Even as her schedule grew busier, Emily made time for personal connections. She stayed close to her former colleagues in the janitorial staff, joining them for coffee breaks and holiday celebrations. When asked why she maintained these relationships, she replied simply, "They remind me of who I am, and that no matter how much things change, some things should stay the same." Her loyalty inspired others to follow suit, bridging gaps between faculty and support staff that had long existed. As years passed, Emily's legacy grew stronger. Former students credited her with changing their lives, while peers admired her unwavering dedication to fairness and innovation. Even those who had doubted her early on now spoke of her with admiration, acknowledging the profound impact she had made, not just on the university, but on society as a whole. For Emily, however, the greatest reward wasn't fame or recognition. It was knowing that she had helped pave the way for others to shine. Whether through her teaching, research, or advocacy, she had shown the world that potential knows no boundaries. And though her journey had taken her farther than she ever dreamed, she remained steadfast in her belief that true success lies not in personal achievement, but in lifting others up along the way. Years later, Emily stood on the stage of a grand auditorium, accepting an honorary doctorate from her alma mater. The room was filled with applause, but Emily's mind drifted back to the quiet evenings she had spent mopping floors and scribbling equations in the margins of old notebooks. It was surreal to think how far she had come, from being an unnoticed janitor to becoming one of the most celebrated mathematicians of her generation. Yet, despite the accolades and titles, she remained the same person at heart, humble, curious, and deeply committed to making a difference. After the ceremony, as guests mingled over refreshments, Dr. Reed approached Emily with a warm smile. Now retired, he leaned heavily on a cane, but his eyes sparkled with pride. "You know," he said, his voice tinged with nostalgia, "handing you that calculus problem was the best mistake I ever made." Emily chuckled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It wasn't a mistake, Dr. Reed. she replied gently. It was an opportunity for both of us. Her words carried a quiet wisdom that resonated deeply with him. Indeed, their journey together had been transformative, not just for Emily, but for everyone whose lives she touched. Though she had achieved so much, Emily never abandoned the routines that kept her grounded. Every evening after work, she could still be found tidying up classrooms or organizing supplies. To her, it wasn't about clinging to the past. It was about staying connected to the place where her story began. This university gave me a chance when no one else would, she often reminded people. The least I can do is give something back. Her actions inspired others to adopt a similar mindset, fostering a culture of gratitude and service within the institution. Emily's influence continued to ripple outward, long after she stepped away from full-time teaching. Former students carried her lessons into their own careers, applying her methods to solve complex problems in fields ranging from medicine to engineering. One former protégé, now leading a global nonprofit, credited Emily with instilling in him the belief that math could be used as a force for good. She taught me that numbers aren't just abstract. They're tools to improve lives, he said during a TED talk. Stories like these were a testament to Emily's enduring impact. Even outside academia, Emily's advocacy left a lasting mark. Her efforts to promote inclusivity paved the way for countless individuals who might otherwise have been overlooked. Universities across the country adopted programs modeled after her Open Doors initiative, creating pathways for underrepresented groups to access higher education. Community centers inspired by her work sprang up in cities worldwide, offering free workshops and mentorship opportunities. Through it all, Emily remained a guiding light, quietly championing causes close to her heart. In her later years, Emily took up writing, penning essays and memoirs that shared her insights with future generations. Her books became bestsellers, not because they were written by a renowned genius, but because they spoke to universal truths about perseverance, self-belief, and the power of curiosity. Readers from all walks of life found solace and inspiration in her words, which encouraged them to embrace their unique talents and pursue their passions without fear. When asked what advice she would give to young people starting out, Emily always offered the same simple message: stay true to yourself, and don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of. Intelligence isn't defined by degrees or titles. It's defined by how you use your gifts to make the world a better place. As Emily grew older, she spent more time reflecting on her journey. She realized that her greatest achievement wasn't solving a difficult calculus problem or earning international recognition. It was proving that brilliance can emerge from anywhere, given the right opportunities. By breaking down barriers and challenging stereotypes, she had opened doors not just for herself, but for countless others waiting to step through. And so, even as her hair turned gray and her steps slowed, Emily continued inspiring those around her. Whether through her writings, her advocacy, or simply her presence, she reminded everyone that potential has no limits, and that sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin in the most ordinary places.